Hi everyone, it's James here. Welcome to another video. So today's going to be a response video to a great video which I've just watched by Kris at Dixieland Farm. Check out Kris if you haven't already. He's been around on the vinyl community for a very long time. One of my oldest friends here on YouTube, and Kris did a video and it was called Albums Which I Had to Own on Vinyl. I'll leave the link below so you can watch that. I won't try and summarise everything that Kris said, but essentially, it's this idea that there are certain records that you feel like you must own on vinyl. There are those of us who collect records obsessively, and many of the purchases that we make are impulse buys, blind buys, just things that we feel that it'd be quite nice to have them in the collection, but we're not that fussed if we don't have them. So we're not talking about those records. We're talking about those ones that for some reason we feel like we must have. And it's not enough to own them on CD. There are quite a few of the records I'm going to show today which I already had on CD prior to buying the record. So this all really goes back to my discovery of the vinyl community, really. And my record collection has been in existence for many years. I started collecting records when I was about 3 years old, and by the time I discovered the VC, it would have been about 7 years ago. Most of my record buying had cooled off quite a lot. I was still buying charity shop records, but in terms of great albums or things I felt like I must own, I'd kind of moved to CD largely. I was aware that a lot of these great albums had started coming out on vinyl again, but it wasn't something which particularly interested me until I started watching certain videos on the VC and seeing people show things on vinyl and thinking to myself, God, it never occurred to me to try and get that on vinyl because there'd been so many years of CD buying. And I'll show you an example. So this is one of the first records I bought when I started making vinyl videos. It was right before, actually. This is Love and Forever Changes, and this is a record which kind of rewired my musical brain. It would have been back in the 90s. I have made a video on this, so I won't bore you with the details now, but that was a record which I remember I started drawing up lists and thinking to myself, right, which records do I really need to have? And that was an album that was pretty much on top of the list. There were a couple of other ones, but that one certainly I seem to remember being very, very, it felt like a very urgent purchase. Like, that's one I have to get on vinyl, and it's on white vinyl. I can still remember buying it. It came mail order, and I got it on the turntable, and it was almost a religious experience, really. I remember just kind of sat there watching the white vinyl going around on the turntable and just thinking, oh great, how cool is this, never thought I would own that on vinyl. So there we go. All of these records, I should say, they're all reissues, they're all vinyl reissues. I'm not going to go into all the details of who reissued them and that kind of thing, but they are all brand new, remastered, or just reissued records. This is another one, Sonic Youth Goo. I've never been a kind of major Sonic Youth fan, but this is a record that was quite important to me. Again, back in the 90s, I discovered it in the collection of a friend, a housemate actually, and it was during a period, I suppose, when there was lots going on for me in my musical life or in my personal life, and it's just a record which chimes with me at the time. Great big noisy beast that it is, and just love the cover art. So that's definitely one which I figured early on in this process. That's definitely one that I'd like to get the record of, having had the CD for many years. And this one too was on a very, very early list. This might actually have been the record that I'd seen the person showing on the vinyl community video. I can't remember who it was now. It was somebody with a lot of subscribers. It was an American guy with lots of subscribers, but he showed this record, Marquee Moon, which I'd long had on CD. It's an album that takes me back to a very particular time, kind of early noughties, when I was stuck in a dead-end job and kind of just, I'm not in a very good place, but then I managed to pull myself around from that, and there was this very nice period where I kind of started to rebuild my life a little bit, I suppose, and that's one that kept me company. And obviously it's a great record. It's one of those revolutionary proto-punk kind of masterpieces, really, so I just figured, yeah, it'd be nice to get that on vinyl. This one, again, it was very high on the list. Otis Blue, Otis Redding sings soul, something I'd had on CD. I got into soul music in the mid-90s, and there were a fair few things that I'd had on CD and loved very much. You can see behind me there I've got a copy of What's Going On. That's not actually a reissue, that's some kind of original pressing which I picked up in the market here in Lancaster a while ago, but certainly, you know, great soul masterpiece like that, I figured it has to be in the collection, so I wasted no time in buying it. This one, just a record which had long been a favourite. I thought it'd be great to have that on vinyl. Love the cover art. It's Soul Mining by The, an album I discovered in, I can pretty much date it to 1993. Always loved this record. Great cynical take on life by Matt Johnson, and this is the album that contains the incredible piano solo by Jules Holland on Uncertain Smile, I think, isn't it? So yeah, there was that one. All these were quite early purchases in terms of me getting back into collecting vinyl seriously. This one, I missed the Stone Roses when they first burst on the scene, but I was listening to them intently by the time I was in my third year. My final year as a student here in Lancaster would have been back in 1992, 93. Just a record that brings back great memories. Again, I love the Jackson Pollock cover art by John Squire. Figured that would be a nice one to have on the vinyl format. This one I searched for a reissue, sorry, I searched for an original copy of this for a long time, couldn't find one, so eventually I did cave in and purchase Red by King Crimson, which is easily my favourite King Crimson record. That takes me back to, would have been early noughties when I was getting into, I was playing drums in a band. It was a sort of harder, heavier band than I'd previously been into, and I was trying to learn something more about a heavier style of playing, and that's a record which really started to obsess me. So that seemed like quite an important one, and one that I needed to get. So let's just try that on that side. Yeah, King Crimson, Red. That sounds absolutely tremendous. It's a really great sounding record. I'm dotting around a bit in time. This one by The Doors, LA Woman. Again, this is a drumming story, but a bit earlier. This would have been when I first started playing the drums, really. It would have been in 1992, 93, and the actual title track, LA Woman, just blew my head off. John Densmore was drumming. That great section where the band all accelerate slowly into the fast section. I used to play along with that in the garage at my parents' house, and easily my favourite Doors record. This is quite a cool edition. It's got the thing where you can pull out the the yellow thing. So I made a video on this release. It was among the first 6 or so videos I ever made. So definitely an important album. And this one, just a record. I mean, I think I made a 40-minute video about this album back in the day. This is one that I just had to own on vinyl. Tom Petty, Full Moon Fever, back in the summer of 1990 when I was still a student. My first discovery of Tom Petty, and this one and the next one actually, Into the Great Wide Open. I've got an original copy of that which I bought from a charity shop. This is the reissue, Full Moon Fever. I felt like I had to have that one in the collection. This one, an artist I don't really talk about at all, but this record was a real big favourite of mine for a long time. GP, the debut album by Graham Parsons. I remember I had a cassette of this. It would have been taped from the CD, and it just lived in my car for months on end. And the track She on side 2 of this record, was it on side 1? No, yeah, end of side 1, Parsons and Etheridge. Just one of the most gorgeous songs of all time. They're incredibly emotive vocal performance from Graham. Probably a Desert Island disc for me. That's one that I felt like I had to get on vinyl. That's got a good gatefold actually. Won't show it to you because I don't want this video to be too long. And this one again, this is one that lived in the car for many years. I bought the original, I bought the reissue CD that came out. It would have been in the 90s. I didn't buy the box set, to my eternal shame. I had a housemate who bought the box set when that was reissued. I didn't pick it up. When I saw this final reissue a few years ago, I thought, right, I need to get that. I knew the songs backwards, from having had this cassette in the car. I first saw this album, it was Damon Albarn from Blur showed it in an issue of, I think it was Q magazine, it was, or maybe Mojo magazine, end of the year roundup of things he'd been listening to, and he showed this record and talked about it. I'd never heard about it, I'd never heard of it at the time, but you know, extremely seminal release, great fun, garage suburban rock from 1960s, just one that I figured it would be extremely cool to have on vinyl with that amazing artwork. So there we go, Nuggets. Another soul classic, which it just felt absolutely essential to have, Curtis Mayfield. I think this is the debut album, isn't it? I also picked up Roots as well on vinyl. Those are the only two that I have. But that felt like something which needed to be in the collection. For many years I only had a CD best of Curtis, but I'd started to explore his albums on CD, but I figured that's one that needs to be in the collection on vinyl. My favourite Kinks album, and always loved the cover art of this one with the band standing at the bar and this guy here throwing them a bit of a hostile look. And yeah, always been a favourite Kinks album. That reissue came out a few years ago on nice, very solid heavyweight vinyl. Figured it would be nice to get that one. This one, a record which again goes back to my early drumming days. There was one song on this album which I studied ferociously. I remember in my bedroom, I think I had it on CD, and it was the track Fire from the Jimi Hendrix Experience, their first album, Are You Experienced? Just there were two drummers that I was obsessed by when I started playing. One was John Bonham, and I used to study his right foot patterns really on the Zeppelin records. Mitch Mitchell, it was more his snare drum technique. He had this very bright, explosive sounding snare drum, and on the track Fire he used to do these, well he did these amazing ricochet style snare drum rolls, and I used to practice them and just listen to the track over and over again. So that was music that was pretty important to me. So when I saw that reissue, I thought, yeah, gotta have it. I remember playing this record for a friend of my son who was learning the guitar at school, and he came round one day after school and told me he was learning the guitar, and I said to him, has your teacher played you any Jimi Hendrix? And he said, no, who's he? And I thought, bloody hell, you know, useless is that. So I grabbed this record, put it on the turntable for him, whacked up the volume, and you should have seen the look on his face. I'm not sure if he quite knew what to make of it, but I'm hoping it's an experience that he still remembers all these years later. This one, just a great record which I loved back in the 90s, had it on CD. I'd never thought about owning a vinyl copy of it, so that was one that ended up on the list. Beautiful Freak by Eels, who were a 90s alternative rock band really. Again, many years ago, here on YouTube, I did a whole video on that album. Great stuff. This one, my favourite album by this artist, again, it goes back into the 90s. Nick Drake, Brighter Later. And I just love the production on this record. I love the slightly more pop sound. Just very, very well done. Beautiful record, very autumnal, and just love the cover art. Figured that's one that needed to be in the vinyl collection rather than just being on CD. And we'll finish with a record. I'll take this one out actually to avoid any more glare, but this is one, it's a Rolling Stones album which I didn't have in my collection. I collected nearly all the Stones records really, apart from the very early ones. This one had eluded me, and it was my birthday a few years ago now, and I put it on my birthday list finally as a reissue. I decided it was time that I had a vinyl copy of Her Satanic Majesties. When I got this reissue, I'd actually never heard the album before. I don't think I'd heard bits of it. I heard a couple of songs, but I'd never actually heard the album. So I figured it would be great fun to get the vinyl reissue of this, and you know, beautiful artwork, and just a fantastic gatefold. Look at that. Just absolutely beautiful. Great album. Is it as good as Sgt. Pepper? That's a matter for a separate video, I think, but certainly one that I felt like I needed to own. So there we go. Not quite sure how many I've shown there, but that's my take on it. This could be a really good thread actually if anybody else ends up doing a video about this topic. I think it would be interesting to see not just records that you fancy having on vinyl or ones that it would be quite nice to have, but ones that in some way you feel like, yeah, that's a record that definitely must be in the collection on the vinyl format rather than any other format, although I do have many of those records, if not all of them, on CD as well. So there we go. Hope you enjoyed the video. I will be back soon, and bye for now.